Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Victoire. I am your host, Emir. Before we begin today's broadcast, I ask that you kindly subscribe to our channel, like, and share our videos. It helps us spread these inspirational stories much, much further. Today's guest is undeniably one of the most accomplished wrestlers in the modern era. He has held the World Heavyweight title across 3 organizations, including WWE, TNA, and ECW. ECW is where he plowed his trade. But before that, he was a kickboxing and martial arts champion also. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our esteemed guest, WWE Hall of Famer, Rob Van Dam. Victoire. Sponsored by California's own Clark's Nutrition and Natural Foods Market for all your organic produce, healthy foods, and supplement needs. For all your pro wrestling memorabilia needs and to meet and greet the superstars of the ring, visit the Wrestling Guy store, located in Huntington Park, California, and in Phoenix, Arizona. But if you'd like to order online, visit www.thewrestlingguystore.com. Wear casual clothing that makes you feel like $1 million. Or, if you are seeking custom t-shirts, look no further than J Money Clothing, 760-367-8566. If you're looking for high-quality tattoos, then look no further than California's own trusted tattoo company and mobile body art bus. That's right, mobile. Contact 760-645-0485. Do you need to advertise your business and make a statement? Then do so at your Villa Magazine, 951-990-8855. San Diego County and surrounding areas, go ahead, be a rebel, and support independent news. We also have advertising opportunities available. Valley News, 760-723-7319. Palm Springs, California, Indian Wells, California, Rancho Mirage, California. They're all considered a destination hotspot, a second home haven. With an exquisite record of negotiating the finest deals for clients, Lowell Folsom III and Associates always deliver. Contact Lowell today at 760-391-2504. And now, on with the show. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Victoire. Today, I am joined by a man who has a plethora of accolades after his name. He is a true legend. He's a Hall of Famer. Ladies and gentlemen, Rob Van Dam. Rob, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you. Like I said in the intro there, you've got a ton of accolades after your name. You've accomplished a great many things. But to begin with, let's go back to your childhood, because obviously I would like to know, I'm sure the viewers want to know, where did all this inspiration come from? So who was Rob Van Dam as a young boy?
Well, I didn't watch wrestling until I think late as a kid because I listened to the people that thought it was stupid, and this would have been around WrestleMania, the first one, when it was just getting popular, crossing lines, and really entering the mainstream. I remember the first time seeing it come into my world. There was like a couple of midget wrestlers, I guess, that were promoting on my mom's morning talk show, but I started out as a what I would refer to as a nerd. I wore glasses since 2 years old.
Mhm.
My eyes have always been compromised, and I used to have a bowl haircut. And
Oh,
some of the older kids, like my brother's age, would call me Ernie because there was there was a TV show way back then called My Three Sons back in the 70s. And there was I was a nerdy little kid, I guess, that I resembled, and I was the youngest of three. So I have a sister and then an older brother. And so my parents were older than some of my peers who weren't the youngest in their family, and I remember that being confusing. But I started out intelligent, getting really good grades. I remember thinking like first, second, third grade, I couldn't believe the kids were having a hard time with it. I just remember thinking like it's like the same stuff over and over again, like did everyone forget everything on summer break? And then I actually had a second grade teacher, we called her Miss Mary because kids couldn't say Gachina. But Miss Kachina thought that I was academically gifted and talked to my parents about having me skip a grade.
Wow.
And because of budget cuts, I had the same teacher in second grade again in fourth grade. And she couldn't believe how much I had changed because I turned into a goof off. Yeah, just trying to make people laugh to get attention, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I wasn't athletic.
Okay.
Um,
Shocker.
well, let's say I wasn't competitive in athletic sports and I wasn't connected to that world.
Okay.
I didn't even like gym class. It was
Yeah.
something, that we had to do, and I would get in trouble for kicking the basketball across the court and stupid things like that.
Yeah.
But once I got into wrestling, and that was through going in with a bunch of my friends that were like, "Come on, dude, we're all." I was like, "All right, I'm not." They leave me alone every week. I'm gonna go check it out this time, and bam,
Yeah.
I was into the storylines.
Yeah.
Uh, I wanted to see Corporal Kirshner get the Iron Sheik back next week because he got jumped or something, and after this big buildup, of what a hero he was, ziplining in the jungles and stuff, jump out of the helicopter. I think I was like, "Whoa, what? Now I gotta watch it next week." And then it was in my very first live show, which wasn't much later, that somebody put the idea in my head and said, you love wrestling so much, you should work out. When you're 18, I can get you in. And
Mhm.
this was a lady that was in because she knew the wrestlers, and her parents knew my parents, and she traveled with the wrestlers, and she was some kind of a manager or um, assistant of some kind, or maybe groupie, I don't know, but
Yeah.
uh, she put that idea in my head, and even though I didn't keep in touch with her, it just became my single focus
Yeah.
was I'm getting out of Battle Creek, getting out of Penfield. I'm not working for Kellogg's like everybody else.
Yeah.
And man, I guess once she said, you could do this,
Yeah.
you know, I just thought that I just thought like it changed my perspective.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I ever thought of me doing it before, but then I was like, I could be one of these guys, because they were so much larger than life.
Yeah.
And where I grew up, nobody knew anybody that's on TV. There was nobody famous anywhere around uh, Battle Creek, and Tony the Tiger was our celebrity, and
Oh,
so it wasn't like say in LA where half the kids are growing up, like already working on their reading scripts for their first soap opera deal. Get out of high school.
yeah.
It's way different. So, it was a big dream, but
Yeah.
I believed in myself.
Yeah. But you mentioned something there earlier about your mom. You said your mom had a show. So what's that? What show
No,
did
I just said her morning show. I see how you took it that way, but I just meant the show that she watched in the morning,
you? Okay.
whether it's Phil Donahue or whatever back in the day.
Okay. All right. Made sure of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you obviously found your way into martial arts. Now, this was the 80s. So dare I ask, was the Karate Kid blood sport? Were these sort of motivations behind getting you into martial arts, or was it something different?
Absolutely. I mean, that stuff started it just like all the other kids, I would get excited and jump around and mimic them, but I took it a lot more serious, and also I was kind of thrown into martial arts because I wanted to be a wrestler, and I had three friends, with the same dream. We would wrestle every Monday on the living room floor when his parents were gone. Would move all the furniture and throw the cushions on the floor, and we would wrestle. And then there was a guy in town that had this ring in his yard, and everybody knew. It's didn't know who he was, but because Battle Creek has a lot of different areas to it.
Okay.
As far as it's not that a huge city.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's under 100,000 people. I'm sure 60, 70,000 maybe, but there's Harper Creek, Lakeview, Penfield, where I went,
Okay.
St. Phil. Um, anyway, this area was called Verona,
Okay.
and it was a popular road, Capitol Avenue. You had to drive right by it to go in and out
Mhm.
uh, of town pretty much. And there was a ring sitting in the backyard. You could see it. I guess it was in the front yard. People started telling me about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we went up and knocked on the guy's door and said, "Man, we just, what's it going to take?
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
what's it going to take, dude? I got to get in there." And he said, "I am a kickboxer,
Mhm.
and I run kickboxing shows, and if you want, show up on Wednesday at 6 o'clock, and introduce you to everybody, and we train." And so he made us wrestlers go through his kickboxing warm-ups, which included stretching and drills, and then sparring at the end. And I found out that out of all my friends, I was pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then it was about, like, we had 16-ounce gloves on, and it was about punching and kicking and trying to stop your opponent, trying to knock him out. And so it didn't matter. It didn't matter how much experience you had, necessarily. And so, like, right away, I noticed my durability. I was able to take a lot of good hits to the head. and, uh, and at the same time, I was knocking my friends out. And then, and the guy, Kit Likens, he's a promoter. He started booking us at his kickboxing shows. And
Yeah.
so this was before I got into the business officially, at 18. This is when I'm 16, 17. I'm skipping school to take the ring to this bar that the show is going to be at. We weren't
Yeah.
even out inside the bar.
Yeah.
We weren't old enough, and we dropped it off, and we had to wait outside. And then, uh, man, we would set up the chairs eventually, set the ring up, later at night. We would open up the show with a wrestling match that us four put together.
Okay.
Yeah. And then sometimes I would have maybe an advertised fight, maybe an extra fight also, because I was like so hungry to learn.
Yeah.
And these shows were always like at bars, outdoor party places where challengers, appear, you
Yeah.
know. I was just like, "Let me have him, kid. Let me have him." And at first he protected me, like, "Well, hold on." I was like, "No, I could take it." He's like, "This guy's an adult, Rob." I was like, "No, let me have him." And I remember one time, telling me, like, "If you get in trouble, just hit him in the nuts," something like that. But
Yeah.
but after he saw that fight, then he wasn't afraid to give me fights anymore. And then
Yeah.
eventually I went to the Tough Man contest in Battle Creek,
Yeah.
1989, and I watched it, and I was like, "Whoa, I could do this." And then the next year, well, it was actually 2 months later in
Okay.
Kalamazoo, I entered that one, and I got runner up. So I made it all the way to the main event, and then lost on some points, and thought, "Wow, man, I guess it's all right to start believing in myself."
Yeah. I was going to say it must have ignited that determination, that passionate spirit that I can do these things. And all it took was someone just saying to you, yeah, you can do it,
Yeah,
initially.
and that right. And so, like, what I like to do a lot of times when I'm considering anything, I like to put the objective view up against it.
Mhm.
And if it's empty, like, why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Boom, there you go. Why
Yeah.
not me? Why not me?
Right, exactly. Why not follow it? So obviously then you get a passion now for kickboxing, and but then you also did martial arts alongside that as well. Because I'm trying to obviously I did Jin Seikai Shotokan karate, so I spent almost a decade doing that. So I can attest that once you get into martial arts, it definitely gives you that courage to be able to go out and conquer other goals. So how far
That
did you?
ponytail in the back, dude.
Yes,
You knew it.
yes.
Oh, dude, I recognize I think I recognize the influence.
We're all under that influence, man. And I grew up in the 80s too, so it's all the same kind of stuff we were into.
Yeah,
Um,
if you want to get into that a little bit. So at one point, Kit, the kickboxer and promoter, had he needed a place to put his ring. My parents had a pretty decent sized yard. We put it in my yard, and then he disappeared for months and months. And man, I was in that ring every day. And I was challenging everyone at school that I could get to come over there. I wanted to box them or kickbox them or wrestle them or whatever. I just wanted to learn and learn. And I even had, like, in that area, when you graduate high school, you have what's called an open house.
okay.
And it's a tradition. You invite all your friends and family. They all give you money and stuff. I spent the whole time while my grandma I don't think was my grandpa alive then? But anyway, I guess he was, but no, he couldn't have been. But anyway, while a bunch of relatives were there in my yard eating the food, socializing with each other, I was setting the ring up by myself because I wanted to show them, I
Yeah.
wanted to get a demonstration. It took me all day to set it up by myself. And by the time I was done, it was dark, people were leaving.
Wow.
Uh, but at least they know it wasn't a wasted adventure. But so when he disappeared, I started supplementing my skills with the local dojos. And there was three in Battle Creek. There was Todd Tatami's Taekwondo, and then there was some Tung Sudo lessons at the Kellogg Community College. And then there was the Battle Creek Budokan, which taught Kendo, Aikido, and Karate.
Okay.
And I started making my rounds when I could, whether it was coupons for free 2 weeks to get in and
Yeah.
then get in and then getting to like them or getting them liking me, inviting me, whatever. I started absorbing like everything I could. And
Yeah.
besides the fundamentals that I was getting, I was also absorbing that they all didn't have, let's say they didn't see Kit as being on their level. He had a lot of heat. And then a lot of the like local dojos and stuff, like everyone had like their own stories about him to degrade him. And
Wow.
so I went through I went to he had two losses on his record. One of them was Terry Gay in Coldwater. So I went to Terry Gay and started training with him.
Okay.
And then there was a point when Kit came back and wanted his ring back. I didn't want to give it to him. I had been working on some of the venues, trying to set up my own shows.
Yeah.
I was like, you ain't gonna do nothing with it. It's gonna be a way. Not that it was mine. This is
Right.
one of those learning experiences. But I wanted to fight him over it. We worked something out.
Yeah.
He finally came and got his ring,
Mhm.
um, and one day I heard that he had the ring set up at this other house and that he was training with a bunch of kids. And I was like, you know what? This is my time. I went over there and
Yeah.
I just stood there. I just stood there and I just kept eyeballing him, and then he was like, yeah, does anybody want to get in the ring? Rob, you want to? I was like, sure. And I went in there. And at this point, this was like, for me, this was going to be, the pupil beats them,
Yeah.
becomes a master or whatever. And I had so much pent up anger towards him, just off what everyone else was telling me. Not
Yeah.
that he ever treated me bad, you know what I mean? But by what everyone else was saying about, them questioning his legitimacy and his fights and this and that.
Yeah.
And anyway, I went at him, bam, bam, bam. punch to the face. He put his hands up. I would do a like an inside crescent kick with my feet, pull
Yeah.
his hands down,
Yeah.
bam, 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 bam.
Yeah.
And he put him up and I pulled him down again.
Yeah.
Bam, bam. It worked like two, three times in a row. And then he goes, stop. So I stopped and then he went bam and he sucker punched me. Boom. It was like this big moment,
Yeah.
okay, all right, now, do we take it further or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
And at first he was like, Rob, you get the hell out of my ring. You don't come in here with that attitude ever. And I was like, what attitude? I'm just here to work out. And he's like, that's bullshit. Unless you want to take the gloves off and go right now, we
Yeah.
can do that. And then, I had to question myself, like, man, do I want to do that? I kind of do. But, man, what if he's probably a dirty fighter. All this stuff is going through my mind. And I ended up saying, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody. And I left.
Yeah.
And now I know Kit. Like I know like so many wrestling promoters and so many characters in my life, and I just didn't really understand them back then. And I learned, we're all characters, especially in the entertainment business, and but he didn't really do anything to me except, promise a lot and get me excited about a world that he wasn't really able to necessarily lay out. And now that's part of my everyday. 8 out of 10 things people talk to me about, I'm just like, yeah, okay, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, what a story, man. It sounds like the writers from Cobra Kai went and visited your town. They were a fly on the wall. Gosh, man, what a story. Oh man, that's excellent, man. Were you working at the time at all, or were you making money doing the
So
kick?
at this, yeah, so at this very time, I was working, saving up for a wrestling school, and I bagged groceries at a grocery store, and I actually tried cooking at a Mexican restaurant because me gusta hablar español. I wanted to learn everything, but I hated it, and I was so bad at one of the dishes, so bad. They were coming out there grabbing dirty stuff and just rinsing it out and taking it back out to the table because I was so behind. And I
Yeah.
was like, gross, dude. Those refried beans dripping on that spoon. Don't put that on someone's plate. But anyway, I worked at a vending machine for a while, and that one offered up free food. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you're supposed to have a limit on it, but I had a truck full of not just chips and candy bars, but also we would go to factories and fill up sandwich machines. And so I was eating pretty good during that. And I even, to put it this way, I even had control of the currency that was coming in and out. So as I got a couple other friends hired there, they started getting bad habits and then showing me how easy it was to do even better. And um, uh, I was at this time trying so hard to save up because I had written and called wrestling schools all over.
Mhm.
There's an ad in a wrestling magazine that said, "Do you have what it takes? Send $5. We'll send you a list of all these wrestling schools." And I did that,
Yeah.
and I had talked to several of them written back, and I was planning on going to Killer Kowalski's school in Boston.
Yeah.
I I didn't know how I was going to afford living, going straight from living with mom and dad to having my own place, but anyway, that's what I was going to do. And then I ended up finding out about the Sheik, who
Mhm.
was 45 minutes from my house.
Mhm.
And I found out about that actually before the vending job when I was still bagging groceries, but during that time period, because
Yeah.
the same guy that came through my grocery store. He was a big power lifter, and he was training with the Sheik. We struck up a conversation, but then when I worked at the vending machine place, I ended up getting him hired over there, and he's the guy with the bad habits. Now that I think about it, everything's always so synchronistic. Like it all, it's
Yeah.
just a big network of energy. It's all related. So I
Yeah.
love pointing that out.
Yeah. Were your family fully supportive of you? I mean, they knew this is what you wanted. Were your
They,
parents?
they knew, like I went to every live show I could get a ride to, whether it was Battle Creek, Lansing, Not every time in Detroit. That kind of was further, but Grand Rapids. It took me to South Bend. I was just really, really, a fanatic,
Yeah.
and at the same time, um, mimicking all of their moves, also mimicking what I watched on Chop Socky Theater. So even though I wasn't athletic, I was running up trees and doing backflips because I was copying, what I'd seen, and I was a show off on a diving board. And on a trampoline in the neighborhood. And so I just, taught myself my acrobatic and aerobatic abilities. I never had any formal training. In fact, I used to get kicked out of places all the time, like the Y Center. Me
Mhm.
and my buddy Dango, we did everything together. And guy would come in and say, "How many times do I got to tell you, you can't be in here without supervision? You're gonna because you could get hurt." And we're like, "Oh, I thought, okay, so many times." But that was part of how I had to piece it together. It's so different than now, where someone has the right look or whatever, and they're like, "Hey, you want to be a pro wrestler? Here, we'll pay you to go to a school, let us train you."
Right.
It seems like, I mean, they still pay a lot of dues, and they're still not going to make it
Right.
unless they're able to really handle the load. I
Yeah.
don't question that, but it is easier than it's ever been in my career to get in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I see that. Speaking to a lot of the guys that, and some of the guys that started before you, it seems like it was a lot more difficult back then. Now it seems that the pathways, or at least it's the illusion that the pathways are a lot easier now. But like you said, you've got there are other elements and components that come into play. Physically, you've got to be prepared. Mentally, you've got to be prepared, and all of the above. How much of it for you was the creative aspect, the storytelling aspect? Was it more of that that pulled you in, or was it the physicality?
So it was both. I mentioned it was the story at first because I really wanted to see Corporal Kirshner have justice.
Mhm.
He was attacked from behind on his way to the ring or something, and so during that time there was that, but then I quickly found that I had an affinity towards the wrestlers that were thinking outside of the box, because back then it was a lot of really big 260, 280 pound guys, and those guys don't fly around that much, so the guys that would fly around really stuck out in my mind, like Leaping Lanny Poffo. Even though he got beat all the time, I pulled for him as a fan, like, man, I think this is going to be his night. And I would um talk to him whenever he was at the live shows, get his autograph, be like, man, Lanny, you're my favorite wrestler. And probably not too many people told him that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but he was. And then Brady Boone, and also Owen Hart, a little bit later. Like, these guys all contributed towards my passion and motivation to think outside of the box. So way before my first match, when me and my buddies were even in the living room wrestling, we were always thinking of new moves that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah. Yeah. And what
Uh,
about
that's
what
what we
about
enjoyed.
what about character, Rob, at the time? Were you thinking character development even then as a youngster?
Not as much, and I think that staying true to myself, answering that and the last question, probably shows throughout my career. You know what I mean? Like, some of the guys that look in the mirror and they do promos and they have a certain cocky look, they're so good that it draws natural heat. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
someone like the Miz, for instance, or well, we'll just stick with him. Like when he first came around, he was so believable that he believed in himself, that it made a lot of wrestlers in my generation feel like he's got no right to feel that comfortable yet. That little cocky, you know what I mean? So he would get kicked out of the dressing room or whatever because he was, a little too comfortable, because you got to earn that right. But at the same time, those are the guys that make the money, the guys that are so committed that they can even have everyone around them wondering if that's really them, because it has to exist in there. You tap into a personality, a perspective, you commit to that view.
Yeah.
But I feel like exist up there in order for someone to really be convincing and come through. So I think like throughout most of my career, I wasn't known for being someone that loved to get on the microphone and do promos. I wasn't known as one to boast
Mhm.
and try to convince all of you that you got to buy a ticket because I'm gonna win. I just kind of went, mostly with talking about myself, and then I had a hard time when my mission is as a puppet to generate someone else's values. You know what I mean? Like the writers, for instance, if I have a match with Edge on Friday for the Intercontinental Championship, but they want me to portray that this is the most important thing in the world to me. Well, guess what? It might not be. You
Right.
know, a marriage at home, whether it's falling apart or it's good or whatever at that time, might
Yeah.
be more important. Kids, if I have them, family. So,
Yeah.
so you have to be able to portray that as a soldier, not as a leader with
Yeah.
your own values. And so that was always challenging for me.
Yeah, it might have been challenging, but as you're speaking there, Rob, you made such an impression, and you are still one of the biggest characters in the past 3 decades.
Well, cool.
Seriously, I mean, it's
I,
incredible. What you
yeah,
know.
I get when people say that they get the impression that I'm just very much like the myself in the in and out. I agree with that.
Mhm.
Like I don't change a whole lot.
Right.
I am a lot more of I don't know if I'm an introvert. Probably. I probably am in action in my, social activity. I'm definitely an introvert. I
Mhm.
hardly leave home. I don't like to talk, so if I mean I'm obligated if I'm doing an interview. I have a lot to say,
Yeah.
but I don't feel like everybody wants to hear it. I'm not one of those people that everyone has to, I gotta have everyone's attention. I'm the last person, I'm the quiet guy.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the differences. And I'm passive because, again, as a wrestler who is a soldier for other people's causes. Sometimes, if there's a challenge, I got to be the first one to step forward, and maybe I wouldn't be in real life anymore.
Yeah.
20 years ago, 30 years ago, probably, definitely when I was learning about myself.
Yeah.
And now it's very rewarding in the way that I've learned so much about myself, about my relationship with the universe,
Yeah.
my relationship with everybody else. Just it's so rewarding. I wouldn't go back in time for anything.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll definitely get into that a little bit later, Rob, because of you, like you said, the wisdom that you've gained now and what you're doing today. But going back a little bit to your training with the Sheik now. So tell us a little bit how that was like when you first walked in and how you adjusted and obviously you were already doing some things by yourself prior to that. So how did that kind of mesh with now what you were being taught?
Yeah. So, what me and my buddies were doing in the living room, although it wasn't completely inaccurate. I mean, we really didn't know much at all. And with the Sheik, it was all about the basics. So, in the Robert Dome, that's what we called it. I
Yeah.
would jump up on my buddy's shoulders and roll into a victory roll and grab his legs and be like, cool. And then, with the Sheik, it was about just lock up,
Yeah.
headlock. That's what he wanted to see. And that became the foundation, which is one of the things that they don't teach as much anymore, but it was always going back to the wrestling. And
Mhm.
so it was so old school. It was just coming out of the time where some of the curtain was being raised a little bit on the business, but it was still very much a secret society.
Yeah.
When I got into the business, I wasn't allowed to ride with bad guys because I was a good guy. I
Mhm.
got in trouble for that. I got in trouble for that in 1990 in USWA by Jerry Jarrett, because me and Sabu and Judge Dredd and Dango, we all came down from Michigan together. I'm the only baby face. And so now I got to get dropped off blocks away from the building and then walk, with my bag
Yeah.
because I was learning that about the business though. And they were very protective of the art because that's how they made their money. And that's the world that I came into.
Yeah.
The very first time I met the Sheik, Tom took me there. Dango came later, 6 months later, Judge Dredd later. So right now it's just Tom, the big powerlifter, Samson, um, and Sabu, who wasn't Sabu yet. And he was just the Sheik's nephew, Terry, and me. So the ring, the first time that I was there was in a garage. Sheik's son was a mechanic. He had this truck garage, and they had cut a ring in half to put it in there, to fit it in there.
Yeah.
And so it was 8 feet by 16 feet. So you could
Right.
only run the ropes one way.
All right.
And you got to be careful about bumping depending on where you're located the other way. But I didn't know what to expect. And she told me get in the ring. And everything that I had just done on my own up till then, at that moment, that was what my resume was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm being interviewed for a job, basically, just by him and Sabu and Tom standing there like this, and
Mm-hmm.
me in the ring by myself. And she says, "Oh, you said you do martial, you do kickboxing and flips and stuff." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I do." And he goes, "Show me."
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And I'm 18 years old, about to be 19. And so I'm thinking, okay, let's see. Boom, do a back handspring, jump up and do a spinning kick. Bam.
Yeah.
So, okay, what else you got? Oh, okay. Let's see. I roll back, I do a nip up, do
Yeah.
another somersault, boom, drop down into a split,
Yeah.
nip up again. Okay, what else you got? Oh, I go up the top rope and do a backflip. Eventually I ran out of stuff, and I had no idea how I was doing. Like, am I passing or what? And then he tells Sabu, he goes, Terry, get in there with him. And Sabu just comes at me and bam, he locks up with me. I didn't have any instructions or anything. I didn't know what to do. So I'm letting him push me.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to not fall or whatever. And he says, resist me. He said, push me back. And I go, what? He goes, just try and counter what I'm doing. And then he just started like pushing and pulling and jerking me around the ring and walking all over. And I'm trying to do my best I could, hanging in there, not really knowing what he's doing. Yeah. And then like, boom, all of a sudden he like goes behind me, and I'm in a waist lock, like so quick. And then he's, all right, good job. And then I was like, really? And she said, come back next week, bring me $50. Yeah. Bring me some money. And it was $50. But he took little payments to go towards this $2,000 membership. It was very onerous, which if I trained somebody, I would want them to only know my way if they're using my name,
Yeah.
I want someone to train with me for a couple of days and then go learn a bunch of bad habits. And so, RVD trained me, and it's stuff I don't approve of. So I get it. And because of that, I was afraid to tell them about some of the other stuff that I was doing, the kickboxing and stuff like that. I was training for the Tough Man contest because wow. Yeah, I didn't even realize this synchronicity, but the Tough Man contest in Battle Creek would have been like just right before I met Sheik, probably, or around that time in December when I was 18, and then I turned 19, and then in February I entered the 1990 Kalamazoo Tough Man contest, and at this point I felt like Sheik owns me, and he's going to be mad if he finds out I'm doing this. So I didn't tell him.
Yeah. How did you do in that Tough Man competition that year?
Yeah, so that was my first one. I got runner up. I was 189 pounds, and so I was heavyweight, but I still looked like a lightweight. I've always been heavier than I look, and the cutoff was like. Sorry, my house makes all kinds of weird noises. My house, the cutoff was, I think, was it 167 or 175? Somewhere in there was the cutoff. And there's only two weight classes, so there was light heavyweight and then heavyweight. And so I fought the big guys, and it was a 2-day tournament. And then I made it, to the main event, and I did good looking back. I was cocky. I remember afterwards because the only The only buddy that ever touched the mat during that fight was one time he was coming at me with this. He had this Emmanuel Rodriguez. He was known for winning several of the tough man and bad man contests, and he would go around and collect. So I was told. So that made extra good that I was able to hang with him. But I knew he had a finishing move, and he would hook the back of your head and pull it down, and then uppercut. And he did it to so many people and stuff. And I was like, he's not going to get me with that, you know. And then when he did it, it wasn't that hard, but he stood on my foot. And
Oh,
so I did a back somersault. And when I got to my feet, the referee held me back and made a 8 count, you know, and I was like, no. But anyway, I lost some points, but I got like the scorecards from the judges and the trophy.
yeah,
Uh, it was 1,000 for him, $100, I think, for me. But when I say I was cocky, I remember specifically talking to him in the back, and instead of being appreciative, like thank you, sir, or anything like that, I was like, man, I'm so pissed at myself. I know I could have done better.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
looking at me, he's like, you did all right, kid.
yeah.
You know, what is it? Sure. Always looking back at a lesser me. That's part of growth.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that takes us to 1990, Rob, and what a great story. But now you're focused again on pro wrestling intently. When was your first match that you went out after training with the Sheik? What was that for? What company was that for? Do you remember that very
It
first?
was actually the Sheik. He ran a show and it was in Toledo, Ohio. And this would have been in um yeah, well, I guess it had to be in 90. And it was supposed to be an outside show. It got rained on. It was at the racetrack, the Toledo Speedway. And so it got moved inside. And this was my first actual wrestling show. And Dango too, because he'd come along, my best friend by then. We went to school together. We did everything together. So he's always in the story. If I don't mention him, he was there. Uh,
There.
Brought him 6 months along after me, and anyway, we were excited, man. It was the Sheik wrestled. It was either the Sheik was there, Ken Patera was there, and Abdullah the Butcher. I'm
Wow.
not sure what the matchups were, if it was Ken or the Sheik that wrestled Abdullah the Butcher,
Yeah.
but those were the big stars, that we were really excited to see, and plus some of the local big time wrestling, as it was called. Some of the guys that were stars right before my time, which I didn't realize till I read the Sheik's book recently. It's easy to think that the history happened so much before us.
Mhm.
I'm always learning it didn't. In fact, I came right in and I'm just part of history. And I'm always preaching that to other people, especially with the woke
Yeah,
society.
yeah,
Everyone's always like so shocked. I can't believe they do that to people. Do you know what they used to do to people like just a few years ago?
yeah.
And I'm always telling people about this. Like, do you know? Anyway, uh, so I think Fargo was there. Was Freddie Fargo there, maybe? Or anyway, there was a women's match. There was a ninja midget turtles match in a cage. And one thing that I'll never forget, of course, the Abdul the Butcher, he's sitting there and we were sitting outside because the rain had stopped now, but it was just getting air outside the dressing room. So we're sitting there in a circle and putting our boots on or whatever. And Abdullah is trying to have a martial arts talk with me. And we're both sitting in our seat. And he's like trying to tell me, hit somebody right there, champ. Hit somebody right there in the, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And he goes, you know what? He goes, let me show you something. He goes, here, he goes, choke me. He goes, choke me. And when he leaned over towards me, the whole chair collapsed into toothpicks. It went, he rolled on his back like a turtle.
Yeah.
And me and Dango were trying so hard not to laugh because it was like the funniest thing ever to us, but we were scared.
Oh yeah, reason to be with Abdullah.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was so funny though. And he no sold it. He just got right up, got another chair, choked me.
yeah. Oh man. Yeah, wow. So what a beginning. At that time, obviously WWF was massive. It was making an international splash. That's when I first discovered it, like 90, 91. WCW was still struggling at that point. So you're still a fan now at that time. Who were some of the guys that you were a fan of in 90, 91?
Um, so as I'm having my first couple years of
Yeah.
wrestling,
Yeah.
uh, that's a it's a good question. I think, like Ultimate Warrior was somebody that I was really inspired by, you
Yeah.
know. In
Yeah.
fact, that wasn't new though. In fact, years before, at some of those kickboxing shows that we wrestled at, I called myself the Battle Creek Barbarian, and I put shoelaces on my bicep and Sharpie on my face, and was obviously inspired by him. So he was around a little bit before that. Once I got in and was doing my own thing, what's weird is one of the first things that they taught me was they kind of stripped the fan out of me.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
I don't want to, not like a brainwashing, but more like a programming.
Hmm.
And nowadays that's not a factor anymore. You know what I mean? So like before that match at the Toledo Speedway, I went to one show with them, but I wasn't booked at it. And this was in Ohio as well. In Euclid, Ohio, and the Sheik was there to wrestle Jerry Lawler. Um, the Mounties were there, I think. I'm remembering like some of the wrestlers I met because at this point I'm training, hadn't had my first match yet. There's Alunda Blaze, which was Medusa then. She wrestled Rock and Robin, I
Hmm.
believe. Yeah. Anyway, before I guess Dango wasn't there. I don't know, but I can't remember. But anyway, before the Sheik and Sabu would let me come with them and be part of their clique in the dressing room, they beat the fan out of me, and they said, you're either a fan or you're a wrestler, one or the other. You can't do both. And if you're in there as a wrestler, which is the only way that anybody got in the dressing room then. Don't don't ask anyone for a picture, obviously. Don't, which we didn't have our cell phone cameras, but don't ask anybody for an autograph. Don't mark out on anybody. In fact, don't say anything unless you're spoken to, unless you just want to introduce yourself to somebody. You say your name, shake their hand, look them in the eye, and that's it, unless they talk back to you.
Okay.
And that was like really important in my programming. And because of that, I find that my perspective is way different throughout my whole career than a
Yeah.
lot of other wrestlers that didn't go through that.
Yeah, very true, because you came in when those quote unquote giants were still in the business. So yeah, it was probably a good idea. Probably that happened in some retrospect. So obviously then, in the early 90s, you did go to WCW. I distinctly remember Robbie V. So how did that come about, and did you enjoy your time there with WCW?
So WCW was for me December of 92 to May of 93. And I had been in Florida at that time, staying down there, wrestling every Thursday at the Tampa Sportatorium for a promoter named Ron Slinker. Ron Slinker, I had met in USWA in Tennessee. And when I met him, he was the first guy to tell me, and this is way back in 91. So I was just 20. And
Okay.
he was telling me, kid, he said, I might be wrong about you, but he said, I think you're going to be world champion someday.
Hmm.
He
Hmm.
said, I wasn't wrong about Steamboat. I wasn't wrong about Rick Rude. He said, I think that about you. And he gave me his card. I kept in touch. and ended up going down to Florida when I wasn't booked anywhere else, opening up the ICWA Sportatorium. I helped painting the bleachers, hanging the sign up, like, come on, let's go. I want to work.
Yeah.
And Ron Slinker gave me the name Rob Van Dam. And, I didn't think anything of it because I was taught by the Sheik at that, the first couple of years that you're wrestling, just go for ring time. Don't
Mhm.
worry about who you're wrestling. Don't worry about, the finish. Don't worry about what they call you. And
Okay.
so I was under that mindset, So I wrestled under a bunch of different names,
Yeah.
variations of my real shoot last name and other stuff.
Mhm.
It didn't matter. And really Rob Van Dam, or Rob Von Dam, as Slinker used to say, that's all that was to me at first. Was like, okay, I didn't know that was going to stick.
Yeah. What was some of the other names you were given though that you wrestled under?
So before that, I wrestled as Rob Zakowski, which is a few letters off from my real name, or Robbie Z. And Dango wrestled as the International Patriots. Also, we were the Flying Tigers.
Yeah.
Um, the Sheik really wanted me to capitalize on my Polish heritage. And I didn't want to, something people don't even realize. But back then, like Polish jokes were a thing. You have to be a certain age. I was asking Katie if she even knows. She's never heard of that. But growing up, there was I guess, I don't know, something after World War II that took a
Yeah.
while to wear off, because I don't hear about it, but there used to be so many books on Polish jokes, and everybody would. And my dad, he's Polish. He was the one that carried him. I said, hey, did you hear about the two
Yeah.
Polak was a word that was like, whoa, that was a bad word. And anyway, when I was just 20, I didn't want to be known as Polish. I sounded like a bad guy, like a heel,
Yeah.
someone that the crowd would turn on. I wanted to be good looking, baby face. I wanted the girls to like me.
Yeah.
And Sheik was like, do you know how much money I made with Igor? And I was like, no, I don't. I don't even know what you're talking about, so that was a thing. He wanted to call me the Polish Prince, and did, once or twice.
Yeah.
So those were some of the names. And anyway, Ron Slinker was the guy that got me the job in WCW as well.
Okay. Yeah. So it lasted just under a year there. So what was that? Just a lack of on their part of creative ideas for you at that time, the parting of the ways?
It could be put that way. Yes, I would add to that. I was so young and green at that time that when I look back to what my perception was, it's not like I knew that much what was going around, but I did know that what you said was true. So I got hired in December by Bill Watts. Bill Watts and Ron Slinker were really good friends, and Bill liked me, and yeah, I'm having matches at the Center Stage Arena in Atlanta, and then also on the road. Not paying very much, but I'm beating wrestlers like Pat Rose, Scotty Flamingo, Buddy Lee Parker, Rip Rogers,
Mhm.
Tex Slazenger, Shanghai Pierce. Tex is Ron Slinker's ex son-in-law. His mom was married to Slinker at that time,
Okay.
and we stayed in the same house in Tampa. And Ron got Tex Slazenger, who's also Median, also Dennis Knight, got him
Yeah.
up in WCW, and then got me hired shortly afterwards.
Got it.
Watts is the boss. I'm doing all this. And then I had a tour in Japan that I had been obligated to. This is going to be my first time going to Japan. I booked it before I got the job with WCW.
Okay.
So Bill Watts said, go ahead and go. Our guys, we have a relationship with New Japan. Our guys don't go to All Japan, but go ahead and do this one tour. I went to All Japan, and I lost my first match in WCW before I went to All Japan against Vinny Vegas, Kevin Nash,
Yeah.
some kind of TV title tournament, I believe. And then when I was in Japan, I got over pretty good in Japan and was told that I had a job there as long as I wanted it. And when I came back from Japan, Bill Watts wasn't there. Ole Anderson was there, and I was lost in the shuffle. So now I'm not winning any matches. I'm either losing on TV, which I didn't like, even at that age,
Yeah.
or I was giving wrestlers tryouts in what we call dark matches that weren't filmed. And I wasn't getting paid that much, like I said. So I was like, you know what? I never turned in my contract. The whole time I was there for 5 or 6 months, they kept asking for my contract. I kept conveniently forgetting it because I knew I wasn't happy because I was making more money before I went there.
Oh, interesting. Wow. But then did you go back to Japan? Because I know you had a stint in Japan as well, right? So then
It wasn't just a stint. I wrestled for all. This is left out of my bio a lot of times when people cover my career. But my first trip to Japan for Baba for All Japan was February of '93, and I continued to wrestle regularly for All Japan until '99 when Baba died.
oh, yeah, that is
Yeah,
a big
yeah.
tenure. Yeah.
And
So
and and let me add this some details in WCW when I was there. Even though like I said, I'm winning these matches on TV. I was getting paid $150 a night. Unless I was on TV, then it was $100. They would dock you to be on TV. So if I
wow.
had like 3 house shows and a TV in a week,
Yeah.
if you do the math, that's like 450, $550 for the whole week.
Yeah.
So out of that, now let's see you pay for your car and hotel and eat and pay Uncle Sam and
Yeah.
try and put something away for later. But anyway, I was making money before I went there. And then when I went to Japan, I think they started me right out at 2 grand a week. So I was like, I think
Yeah.
I've had enough of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in Japan. How did you adjust to that Japanese culture? Did you enjoy it?
I didn't at first. I loved the matches. I loved the physicality, the athleticism. I love the crowd responses, that whole vibration during the shows. Not too, I wasn't too happy with the food. And it was really rough travel. The February tour, which is, I did like maybe 4 of those in a row. That's the shortest tour, which is like 15 days. The longest being a 5 week tag team tournament in November. But on that February 15-day tour, man, sometimes there's 10-hour bus rides. And you take a bus for 6 hours, and then the bus goes on to a ferry. And you get to get off the bus and sit somewhere else on the boat, for a couple hours, and then you get back on the bus. And in a lot of besides the food, just a lot of the place wasn't made for us and our culture. If you're not if you don't find a Western toilet or handicap toilet, then you're squatting over a hole in the tile. And that's what it was like at the truck stops and stuff. And yeah, it took me a while. It took me a while to get used to it. And really, it wasn't until Sabu started wrestling for All Japan as well, because he was wrestling for FMW, then he was wrestling for New Japan. When he came over and we started working together, he taught me how to enjoy some of the finer things over there, how to find Japanese barbecue and how to take a taxi somewhere. And that was what really improved the quality of my life.
Oh, awesome. That's great. Yeah, it must have been a culture shock and a half. Sheesh. But during that time, obviously, you had then what comes up next is ECW. Now, this is the big turning point for Rob Van Dam because this is totally, obviously, I remember the Robbie V character in WCW, but then the total opposite. Now you're in hardcore heaven over here in ECW. How did that come about? So how did you get connected with Paul and how did he bring you into that fold?
Well, so Sabu is wrestling for ECW at the time. He was one of their OGs when it was still East Coast Wrestling or wherever it was, Eastern Championship Wrestling. And he would kept telling me that there's something going on really good over there in Philly. It's growing. He's gonna bring me in when the time is right, and I'll be part of it. And I just kept saying, "All right, cool." Sabu and I have always been brothers, and always will be. And so, we look out for each other, and it just it just was a matter of him. For a long time, he would when I would talk to him, he'd say, "Did Paul call you?" I'd say, "No." "What? He told me he was going to call you." I'd be like, "Whatever." like I told you, I had All Japan, and I was working in the States too. So I was financially, I didn't, I wasn't hungry. And then that happened for several weeks. Did he call you yet? What? He said he's gonna call you. Finally, Paul calls me, and the first time I talked to him, it didn't work out. I wasn't interested in what he had to offer. It was like, I'm not gonna come in for that and do that. Thanks though, appreciate it. And then when Sabu said, "Did he call you?" Yeah, he did. Here's what he said. What? He said that much. So anyway, the deal changed. They brought me up. I got over. It worked out. My first match was with Axel Rotten at the ECW arena, and it was very intimidating for me. I was just being introduced to the whole grunge vibe for the first time ever in my life. It was something that I wasn't real comfortable with. I remember like just throwing some wasted spin kicks in the air just because usually I would do that. People would go, "Yay!" And I did that, and Axel made fun of me and was like, "Oh, good job," and did like a Karate Kid pose. And then the crowd was like laughing at me, and I was like, "He's making fun of me, and they like it," And that was a great crowd to learn how to master my craft in front of.
Yeah, yeah. So I was going to say, coming from this disciplined background into that grunge environment, forgive me for not knowing. We didn't get much of ECW in the UK. We got WCW and WWF. That was pretty much it. I'm not sure where we would have found ECW, but obviously I read about it. This was prior to YouTube videos, so we didn't even get to see, hardly anything at all, but I would see it in the magazines. I remember it was Power Slam magazine out in the UK, and there'd be all the pictures of you guys busted open, and I was like, "What the heck is this?" I mean, it was totally different. So now that's another culture shock adjustment that you had to deal with. So the hardcore style, were you opposed to some of the stuff? Because I mean, I know it went pretty darn extreme, hence the name, but were you opposed to some of the I'm losing my words here. Some
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. And me and Sabu both were opposed to a lot of stuff that we thought took away from the fabric of wrestling, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
We were both offended, but also we had that competitive spirit. So that was part of it too. The first time that Sabu brought me into the ECW dressing room, he's showing me people, pointing out like the eliminators. They think they're really good, but they're just all right. Pointing to the Dudleys. Oh, they're no good, but they think they're good, And he's pointing everybody out. We had that competitive spirit, where we thought, hey, we're the best. These guys are lucky to have us here. And that really was my mindset, my ego back then. And even looking back at it, a lot of it's true. So there was a lot of stuff that we thought like there's, what does that have to do with wrestling? Where they took it too far, cartoony, or just the credibility that we were fighting so hard to preserve and protect was being eroded by and compromised for the sake of this kind of entertainment. So there were certain wrestlers, for instance, we used to think that Mustafa and New Jack, that they didn't know how to do a headlock because all they did was go down with a shopping cart full of weapons that the fans would bring and get confiscated at the door, and they would use those. And so I was at that time Sabu's soldier, whatever he said was bond to me, and we called them garbage wrestlers, and that whole style garbage wrestling. And still today, I consider that garbage wrestling.
yeah,
But now I know, those guys could wrestle, and I also know it had its place,
yeah,
because we all had our own fans. And so moving the competitive spirit aside and looking at it from the bigger picture, I don't feel exactly the same way about it. But we also didn't like people stealing our stuff because we were originators.
yeah.
Sabu would bring in a table and go through it. Everyone went nuts. And then if he wasn't on the show because he's in Japan, Public Enemy would bring a table in and break it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And nobody was doing that. Nobody was doing that back then.
Yeah, yeah, it was. I mean, everything was changing back then, though. And it influenced. a generation, but it influenced a shift in the business, which arguably I think that WWF certainly needed it because they were floundering in the mid 90s. Obviously, WCW was creeping up over them. But you stayed in ECW and you became the champion, tag team champion as well, right? With Sabu?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think maybe a couple times. Yeah.
Times you stayed in there. You had some pretty good storylines, and you stayed there until the end. And did at any point did WWF or WCW ever try to reach out and snag you away from Paul?
Yeah, they both did. They both did. And I pretty much always felt like I had a standing offer to go wherever I wanted for most of my career. And during that time, we just made it part of the storyline. And that's how I became Mr. Monday Night, because the crowd knew that I had offers. They thought for sure I was going to leave because ECW was smaller, and who wouldn't want to do that for their career? And certainly a lot of my peers had already taken that route. So obviously I'm going to go jump ship and leave ECW behind. But instead, I stayed there and capitalized on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to do something that was really different, wrestling in ECW as an outsider, because they believed that I was a WWE guy because I'd wrestle on WWE shows, but I was an outsider there as an ECW guy. So kind of like a heel and an outsider in both places. And so the spotlight was on me during that time.
Yeah, no, it was a big spotlight. But then I do remember obviously the invasion angle, and now is when you come on to that WWF. Well, it was still WWF at that time, that platform. So what was that like? Now you're actually, in WWF. You've been watching since WrestleMania 1. What was that like for you at that point to see that contract, and now you're there with what got you primarily interested in the business when you were younger?
Well, obviously my perspective had changed uh, on what WWE was. I had a complete different uh, insight now. It was not only the pinnacle, but the only place to go at that time to continue a career as a American television wrestler. Everything else was bought up or closed down, and so part of me felt reluctant, kind of like a sellout. I still had that rebellious spirit in me, and WWE was so mainstream that I was afraid they would do something that I didn't like, change my character. They were known for doing that, wipe out my whole past.
Yeah.
I was very excited to learn after I got there that we were reviving the ECW at that time for this invasion angle, ECW and WCW against WWE. I thought that was great. Had no idea, because when I signed the contract, I was ready to accept what lay before me, not knowing what it was. I was so happy. And also I was really happy when I had the what was it called? Hardcore Championship. That felt a lot like ECW to me, like a little moment of ECW during the night. When I
Yeah.
got to go out there for 7 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever it was. For me, that was ECW. So I always enjoyed the hardcore elements, ladder matches, anything where you throw the rule book out and can be a little more creative. And also with my durability, I can withstand a lot more punishments. That's one of my strengths, besides all my cool moves. So I like to show that. And WWE is so big. I learned right away that everyone in the entire world watches them. It took us around the world to places that I never thought I'd be. And I got to see how I personally was affecting their culture by all these kids, whether it's in India, or whatever, that are RVD. And you don't think about that when you're in your own world.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot from some of your peers, but yeah, you definitely made that influence. And within a few years, you were not only WWE champion, but they brought back ECW again, and you were ECW champion at the same time. So that must have been pretty cool for you. Was that 2005, 2006, somewhere around there, I think is when
Well,
that.
actually, was it? No, I guess you're right. Yeah, it was 2006. 2005, I had my only surgery, which was a knee reconstruction, between the ACL and meniscus. So I was out for most of 2005. Came back in 2006. Uh, Brought back the ECW in 2005 with One Night Stand. But I had my leg brace on for the first one. Next time I wrestled Cena, loved the match, loved the whole show, loved the crowd. Definitely a great moment in history. And not just because everything was so perfect, but because my story, if you follow it, is the entire buildup for that match.
Yeah.
My whole career,
Yeah.
sticking to my guns, not minding being different, and not choosing to ignore the right advice to ignore when people wanted to change me, and boom, that here I am being crowned for it. So very awesome. And just I felt like Superman, like being, just knowing that I was ECW RVD. Boom, all of a sudden I felt like indestructible again, and was excited about the matches. I was excited to work with Bob Holly because he was so stiff. I knew we were going to be out there, beating the heck out of each other because I had that fire in me, and I knew that was going to be a great match. And we did have some great matches for a while. Great matches with Test, Sabu, Big Show. Sometimes people forget about all those.
Yeah, no, you had a tremendous run, and that continued right after that. And then you went to TNA as well because you were a TNA champion, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So I chose not to re-sign my contract in WWE in what I believe is 2007. It had to have been. And man, I was so burnt out. And the ECW, they had like burned it to the ground, and that hurt. Yes, that was my baby. That
Yeah,
was my baby.
yeah,
And I was just like, man, I needed a break spiritually. I needed to recollect myself, and I couldn't put a date on it. WWE wanted me to say, okay, how about you take 4 weeks off, or you take eight weeks off, and I was like, you know, the monotony of the nonstop travel had me so that anytime I wasn't traveling, I was subconsciously just counting the minutes till I got to travel again. And I didn't want to do that. And I knew I would be doing that if I had a finish line. So I said, I have to have an open ended destiny, and a lot of people in my spot and position wouldn't have chosen to do that. But that was what I needed for my spiritual health. And I totally, man, I feel like I became a different person. Like I found that there was a weak element in my trifecta. Body great, mind pretty good, but spiritual. My spirit was like so weak, unhealthy, and I spent a lot of time on it. And now, like, it got so important, like just being myself. I'm always hearing from people how I rub off on them and inspire them, and I do my own podcast where I do some RV theology, and I talk about the values that I learned that I use when I make my decisions to avoid regret and to remain consistent with the person that I want to be. And man, I'm still wrestling, and yeah. So 2010, I ended up going back to uh TNA. Yeah,
all right.
2010, 2011, 12. I think I left in 2012, and then went back there again during COVID. Yeah, and recently I've been like on AEW shows, but yeah, I never really stopped. Just slowed down. I've been wrestling in Japan and the UK and wherever, um, on a once in a while basis, or sometimes could be over the last few years, could be 10 times a year, could be a little more, could be a little less. It's just enough to not really get warmed up. It'd be
Yeah.
cool to be somewhere and get warmed up enough to really have a run. But otherwise, on the business end, doing it this way is pretty rewarding.
Yeah, but I was going to say you touched on that point spiritually, your soul. It's just very important. I'm a man of faith, so that's extremely important to me. It is actually everything because you can chase everything you want in life and attain all the mass and wealth that you want. but at the end of the day, what happens to your soul? So you touched on a very important point there. So you talked about some of your RVDology. So maybe share a little bit with that, because obviously, we're trying to make a difference in whoever watches this video. Hopefully someone will gain something from it. So let's talk about that, because you got a lot of young guys that want the world. They want to run, run, run. And like you said, eventually you're running so much, there's no time for you. There's no time left. So what would be the word of wisdom that you would share with somebody who's, yeah, I want to be in the business, I want to be at the top? What would you say to that youngster?
Well, first off, I would want to encourage their dreams, and hey, good job in believing in you and having that passion and knowing what you want to do. A lot of people don't know what they want to do, and that's fine if that's what works for you. My values have a lot to do with accepting that other people have their values and I have mine. To me, that's the simplest concept out of all my values that I think would end just about every conflict I can think of that ever happens. But it's always somebody that can't understand, and it's stupid. It's a pointless argument. Like if I say to you, like, you're going to give up college so you can go to wrestling school. Guess what? If that's what you want to do, that's your priorities. You chasing your dream, trying to do this is more important to you than going to college is to you. That's what's behind that, right? So you're not me. I mean, I might as well say, why is your favorite color white instead of black? That's not cool, you know. And bros do have stupid arguments like that. It's part of just being a basic thinker. Like, what, dude? You think she's hot? You're crazy. There is no wrong answer. We all have our own values, and it doesn't mean you have to accept everyone's values. If the guy living next door to you is, kidnapping children and stuff like that, it doesn't mean that you have to accept all of that. But it does mean you have to get over the fact that their values aren't yours. And by the way, if that is happening, please dial 911.
Yeah, yeah. Please,
Please call.
yeah,
uh,
immediately.
but just knowing that, and not just, oh yeah, not just remembering it, but our ideology to me has to do with all these values that I have. They're always there. I don't have to remind myself. They're always there. So this is what makes my collective perspective that I use to make my decision, to make the actions that I make, my choices. Everything is in line, and a lot of people, unfortunately, are so apathetic. They don't have the ability to think of what it's like for somebody else. They could literally be splashing a mud puddle at a homeless person and not ever think about what it's like for that homeless person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the basic thinker. That's, I think, the majority of people, because it's so easy to be comfortable and not think.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
And so for me, I'm always trying to inspire people. One, imagine outside of just being you. Imagine other people have feelings and perspectives and have other things to do in the day too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it gets frustrating for me sometimes. That's why I don't socialize that much. That's why I'm mostly just a homebody. It's one of the many reasons. But I mean, I could be in a car with somebody, and somebody could just like drive in front of them, and they feel obligated to say something. Say, geez, this guy in a hurry, you going to a fire or something? Man, it's like, bro, you don't know. His wife could be pregnant. I mean, you don't, yeah, maybe he does have an emergency. If
Right.
not, it wasn't that big of a deal anyway. So for me, it has a lot to do with, I have my own values. You have your own values. We seem to associate good with other people that have the most like-minded sets of values,
Mm-hmm.
and have things in common, make it a lot easier than someone. But when there's someone that's like total opposite from you, it's good for the health to recognize that and stay away from that. And
Yeah.
so for me, when I went through my spiritual journey that I'm telling you about, for me, which by the way, it lasted like I mean, I'm still on the journey. We all are, but I mean, it wasn't until 2016 that I hit rock bottom, and because I was going through this journey, and at the same time, I had a bunch of stuff happen. You know, divorce, uh, dog died, dad died, put me in a depression where it was difficult keeping everything balanced and stuff. You know, I talk about it a lot in different platforms. You know, when I write my autobiography, I'll tell the whole story, which is amazing. I'm thankful to have come through that and to make it out of that. But I feel like I had to completely rebuild myself and leave certain things out, which was fine. That's what I did with my life too. I lived in LA with my evil ex, and now that I'm not there, I feel like I could have set the house on fire, burnt everything I owned and ran, and it would have been worth it. And that's what it feels like, starting completely new. I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to collect comic books anymore in my 40s. You know, it's things that I did my whole life.
Yeah.
It was just, if there's any time for a change, it's now. And my spiritual self became not just important, but the most important. So that's what I really wanted to point out. For me, that's still there. My spirit is the most important of the three. So I use that in the forefront when I'm making decisions, you know, like, wow, that glass of champagne looks really good. And then, oh, you know what? You got to give a speech. You might not, it might be challenging, you know. Oh, is it going to be bad for you, healthy? You know, there's not that much sugar in champagne. Is it good? What's it going to do for my spirit?
Yeah.
Let me see it. You know what I mean? And that's, you know, that's because I have control. And, you know, substance abuse is like a whole nother issue. But on that, I feel like there's use and there's abuse, and that's not looked at from an intelligent point of view. Just like, you know, if somebody dies of peanuts, we're not trying to outlaw all the peanuts. You know what I mean? And so, anyway, when with the, I was just referring, that's going to help my spirit. Same thing with being around people, though. It doesn't have to be champagne. It could be, you know, oh, this guy wants to hang out. Am I going to enjoy hanging out with them? No, it's going to stress me out. I'm going to be in a bad mood. You know what? I don't want to hang out with them.
Right.
I,
Right.
I have to. I was so unhealthy. I had to do everything to protect my spirit and avoid things that I thought could still knock me down, because I'd been down for so long that I was having a challenging time getting up.
Yeah, well, very, very glad that you did, because you come to us today very positive, very healthy. You look very healthy. You look exactly the same as what you did back in the, you know, the peak of the WWF years there. So, but yeah, everything you said, I concur with that. One of the last questions, because you know, I want to give you back your time. Rob, what is the meaning of life?
It seems to me that the meaning is to gather information, because every creature that I know of that's alive is comes with senses. We have five senses, and all we're doing is acquiring information all day with our ears, our eyes, our nose, touch it, smell it all day, acquire information, and then we breed. And there's like 7 billion of us on this planet that are exploring all the corners and reaches, and gathering as much information as possible. What we're doing with that information, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. But very good answer. Very good answer to that question. Well, Rob, stay on the line with me. I'm going to say goodbye to the viewers, and thank you for joining us today on Victoire. This was certainly a pleasurable experience, and we thank you so much, Rob, for sharing your time with us and your wisdom, everything that you've gained. We thank you for that. Until next time, everybody, victor what you must victor in your life. I am Emir. This is Rob Van Dam, and this has been Victoire.
See you, everybody.
All right. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Victoire and our special guest, RVD, Rob Van Dam. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation, and we encourage you to subscribe to our channel, like and share our videos. It helps us spread these inspirational stories much, much further. Until next time, I am Emir. Victor what you must victor in your life. Victoire.